what have we come to that I have a 6-pack of photos of girls that it could be the dead girl. There are 6 other girls who matched the description who it could be. It tears your heart out is what it does. And that's the side of us that people don't see.
Modern America is filming today in Bellingham, Washington. We'll be doing a ride-along with the Whatcom County Sheriff's Department. I'm actually going to be riding in the front seat of a cop car without handcuffs on. First time ever. So you've been on the Bellingham Police Force for 31 years.
I have.
That's a really long time.
Yes, it is. I started in January of 1993.
Okay.
So I'm almost at 31 next January, this coming up January.
It's really interesting. A lot of the folks in the criminal justice system and law enforcement that I seem to work with in one form or another, that's roughly around the time, that everybody's experience is somewhere around 30 years, and which I think is great because my experience as a criminal defendant and drug addict was roughly 30 years. And what I appreciate about my interactions with most folks is just the alignment in a lot of our perspectives about what needs to be done. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't change anything. I would do it all over again.
Yeah.
So.
Well, funny thing, same. Even though I wouldn't wish my life experience on anybody, I think it was really necessary, and I'm really grateful, especially where we're at in this day and time right now, and just the challenges that we're facing. And so, is this the only police force you've ever worked on?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
And so how old were you when you started working? Okay, not to age you or anything, but I mean, how young were you? Because I'm guessing you were pretty young when you started.
That's very, I appreciate that, but I was actually not that young.
Okay.
I served in the Army before coming to police work, so I was 27 when I started.
Okay, well, that's still pretty young, especially when life starts at 40.
There you go.
So,
agreed.
Yeah. So, I mean, what has your experience as a police officer for 31 years been like?
I have been fortunate enough to be able to do a ton of different things at my department, which also included working drugs and gangs back in the early 90s as an investigator. And then in the 2000s, I doubled back as the supervisor of that same unit. And what I've been telling people lately is that, people ask me, what do you think about what's been happening? And I said, well, that's a pretty big question to ask me. I can tell you that, like everything, law enforcement changes throughout the years, obviously, and there's things that change, there's laws that change. But the last 4 years, in that compressed time of 4 years, there have been more changes that have occurred to law enforcement with the laws than in any other time in my career.
Yeah.
And then I tell people, look, I have seen a ton of stuff in my career. Some stuff that no human being should ever see.
Yeah.
And nothing that anyone should ever have to see, but it's the profession I chose. But I can tell you one thing. Aside from a gruesome murder scene, I have never, ever seen anything like fentanyl. Never.
Yeah. I've been immersed in addiction for 51 years, whether it was my experience or the experience of my family. I was born into that life, and never in my entire 51 years of life have I ever seen anything like what has been going on over the last technically 4 years, really. I mean, we've seen a massive increase in specifically the last 3 years alone. I want to say the first fentanyl death I experienced was somewhere around 2017, a friend of mine, but it has grown exponentially just over the last 3 years. Can I ask you this, as a law enforcement officer, in the last 4 years, as policies, ordinances, and laws have changed in Washington State, do you feel like these massive, abrupt changes have contributed to community safety?
they have not contributed to community safety, in my opinion. And while I want to give respect to those who are in elected positions, they have put themselves out there, they have gotten themselves elected, and I believe with all my heart that they also believe that they are wanting to do the best for people or communities. Whoops, so sorry. They are well-intentioned. However, I believe while as well-intentioned as many of them are, there are things about which they are uneducated, and there's just no way that they can be educated enough unless they are working in this field. And when someone says, I don't want people to be in the criminal legal system because it is going to detrimentally affect the rest of their life because they have a possession of a controlled substance charge in their file. While I agree with that in theory, if you have that possession charge and then you get yourself clean and sober and then you work towards getting that expunged based on everything that you have done, then that thing is gone off your record.
Yeah.
However, what we're seeing now is this works. I've lived through the end of crack and the beginning of heroin and through heroin and methamphetamine. And while those drugs gripped people, as you well know, and it gripped people to the point where they can't necessarily help themselves, I felt like we were always able to reach them at some point in time.
Whether remove them from their destructive path, not for just a small period of time.
Even if we just booked them. But we also were able to get to them mentally. Like I always used the back of my car when I was driving someone to jail or to the hospital as a way as they were a captive audience.
Yeah.
And I would tell somebody sitting in the back of my car, knowing they're going to go to jail, knowing they're about to hit withdrawal like you wouldn't believe, I would always tell them, listen, you can do more, you can be more, and you're worth it.
Yeah.
This is not you. This is not what you deserve. You don't deserve to be this way. I understand that there's things that have contributed to you and your addiction, but you can get out of it. If you are strong enough to survive on the street to seek dope every day, then you are strong enough to kick it. And you will find that life, once you get the tools, is easier than to struggle to try and get dope all the time. What I can tell you, Ginny, is that I don't feel like I can do that anymore with people who are addicted to fentanyl.
They're missing
fentanyl has grabbed them, and it will not let go. And the way I explain it to people who know nothing about fentanyl, so council members, I've talked to representatives and senators, and I've talked to my own friends who have no clue about addiction. And I will say to them, look, picture the time that you were something scared you so bad that you were literally in fight or flight. Your body was in that fight or flight. You were either going to deck someone or you're going to sprint away running. And think about how you felt after that moment. You were tired, you were exhausted, you're out of breath. You felt like you sprinted 100 yards when you didn't even move.
Yeah.
Near accident right there. That is what heroin does to someone's, or fentanyl does to someone's brain.
Yeah.
It puts them in a fight or flight because fentanyl is that opioid that is physically addicting. So it changes your brain chemistry and it makes your brain feel like you will die without your next dose. Yeah. So whereas heroin, you were gripped into it and you were fiending for that next load, fentanyl is, I think, 1,000 times stronger in that it has changed your brain to believe that your body will die without fentanyl.
And quickly.
And so how do we break into that? And so then when, on top of that now, we no longer have a way to enter someone into treatment through the criminal justice system.
There's no incentive.
There's no incentive for them to do it.
We've removed the ability to use criminal charges as an incentive. And I want to say this too, and this is where my frustration with the naive decisions on our leadership is that, although well-intended, we have gained enough information about what didn't work with our criminal justice system, and then now we're going way over to this other sort of section. We can't just not remove them, but we have developed some stuff in the late 90s up into the 2000s, drug courts, right? Where
Yes.
you could incentivize, where a person didn't end up with the criminal charges,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And so now I do believe that if we developed some more of those diversion type of programs where incarceration did begin the process, where a person is able to gain their mental clarity, and then we put a few more components to address some of those other underlying causes, I think we would have had, more efficacy. But at this point, even with a gross misdemeanor, we're not incentivizing anything because nobody cares. And
Right.
in regards to Bellingham on its own, like, you guys don't even have the jail capacity currently to
Correct.
take action with a gross misdemeanor.
We can, if we need to book somebody, we can, but a gross misdemeanor, drug possession, or property crime is going to get them booked and released.
Right.
So while that enters them in, it gets them into the first step, what our prosecutors are finding, and what people don't understand about the Blake fix, the second Blake fix that they did in May, is that prosecutors don't still have all of the tools
Right.
to do what the legislation has told them to do. Because
Right.
while we can arrest and we can handcuff and we can search and take the drugs away and we can cite somebody, the other side of the thing has not been developed yet as
Right.
to what they're going to do on how they're going to get people in. And you said it right, Ginny. Many people, let me ask you this. Did you care about a gross misdemeanor back
I
in the
did
day?
not.
Right.
I didn't care about a felony, really, because, and this is the thing, and I was thinking about this yesterday. I could count on felony charges giving me respite. I could count on it.
And now that statement right there is what I've tried to tell people so many times. Now, where I see it is that statement is huge, coming from somebody who has lived experience. When you
17
say,
felony convictions, 30 years of addiction.
when you say, I was counting on a felony charge because that allowed me to take respite, that should tell people that you couldn't do it on your own. You needed something or someone. I have so many people, because I've been around for 30 years, like the kid, I don't know if you saw, but there's a young man that walked up to me in the lot.
Yes.
He knows me from the time that he's been 12 or 13 because we chased him around when he was 12. He's in his 40s now.
Yeah.
But there's so many people when I'm in public, they'll walk up to me and they'll say, you don't recognize me, do you? And I said, no, probably not. I have to be honest.
Yeah.
Because many of these, they were 12, 13, 14 when I was dealing with them, or they were high school, or they were very, very much addicted, and I don't have the slightest clue what they look like now with meat on their bones, right? Healthy.
Right.
And so they say, I'm so-and-so, and you arrested me back in the day for heroin. And so I always say, oh, how are you doing? It's fantastic. And they just say, I just want to say, I wouldn't be here today if you hadn't arrested me.
Yeah.
And if people don't understand, I get goosebumps and chills just even saying that. And I'm thinking about several specific people who have said that to me. But people don't understand that we care a great deal and we want people to get clean. But we also have to be the tough parent who is going to hold people accountable. And if you're going to use drugs, I'm going to arrest you. For 18 months.
If you do this, this is going to be the consequence to that choice.
Do you have any idea? I found myself walking one day, saw a woman sitting, literally just inhaling fentanyl, sitting at in the driver's seat of her vehicle, parked. I walked up to the window and she had a pill on the foil and then she had 3 pills laying on her console.
Yeah.
So I just looked at her and I said, I know you have fentanyl, just hand it to me. And she did.
Yeah.
And then I was standing there with the fentanyl in my hand. And I literally had to think about, okay, wait, I have fentanyl in my hand. I got to put it someplace where it's safe. I had gloves on, but I have to.
Yeah, I'm glad. I was like thinking to myself, oh my gosh.
No, I had gloves on because I saw the fentanyl. So I put gloves on. So I have the fentanyl when she gave it to me. And I literally had to stop and think and go, oh, okay, I can't.
Now what do I do with it?
I can't actually do anything with this.
Yeah.
And I literally reached in my pocket and gave her that card. I said, I know you have an addiction problem. I'm going to note this as one of your times that, we contacted you with drugs, but here's your card. And I walked back to my car and I was like, this feels like a dream. I've been a cop for 30 years and I'm walking around with 4 fentanyl pills in my hand that I'm going to go to the police station and throw in to be destroyed. And I can't, this person is A, now going into withdrawals because I took her fentanyl, and B, I can't.
And she's behind the wheel of a car.
Yes. And I can't do anything to arrest her.
Right.
because she was parked in a parking lot, so it's not even something I could have arrested for, thinking that she was high on drugs. And the only thing I did is I stood there for 10 minutes and I just talked to her about all the places that are available for her, that she doesn't have to live like this. She was literally 2 blocks away from our mission.
Yeah.
And so I guided her there, but it was so disconcerting as a 30-year police officer to walk away and go, I have fentanyl in my hands, and I literally there's not even a charge for that at this moment because courts have said it's unconstitutional.
Even though it's a lethal narcotic.
Lethal narcotic made in a bathtub somewhere by a person who doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
And so...
it's killing our children.
And it's killing our children. And so I heard a statistic the other day that is just so very, very, very disturbing. I'm going to take the long way around so we get Geraldine up here. So very disturbing. Since June of this year, in this county, there have been 7 near deaths and 7 deaths of babies under the age of 10 months, most attributed to fentanyl.
Oh my gosh.
And many of them, about 30 or 40%, are Native American.
And then we have House Bill 1227, which focuses on keeping the family together despite addiction.
And then we had the 5-year-old who died in Ferndale because her mother and boyfriend were using fentanyl in the house, and her father living in the garage using fentanyl. Girl found whatever it is she found and went to bed and never woke up. And I'm thinking, if just being addicted to fentanyl is not allowing CPS to take the kids away, and it's not an imminent danger, how is that not an imminent danger?
Right.
This child found whatever it is that she found, and she either swallowed it or rubbed it on her hand, face, or however she died, and then she laid down and died. Yeah. And so to me, it's like, if you are addicted to fentanyl, why can't we take your kids away? Because you have an environment that is inherently, eminently dangerous to your children.
Right.
Because it takes nothing for a baby to die or a young kid to die. And so to me, it's, if we want to predict our future, then all we have to do is look south on I-5. Yeah. And starting in Los Angeles, starting in San Francisco, and going to Portland and Olympia and Seattle and here.
Yeah.
And if the laws in Oregon have not shown us something, the people in Oregon now who are for the laws for decriminalization after 3 years are now looking at the mistakes that they made. So if why are we continuing to change the laws going that direction if those folks are saying we should go back the other direction? And it's not that we're trying to criminalize people. It is not we're trying to criminalize homelessness.
We can't help people without these incentives.
We can't help them sometimes without those incentives, because fentanyl, I know a heroin addict. I know a heroin addict who finally decided one day, I was just talking to him on the street, not arresting him, and he just looked at me and he goes, Murphy, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Take me to detox. I'm going to do it.
Yes.
He was lucid enough to do that, even though he was a full-blown heroin addict. I've seen it with meth and cocaine. I cannot see it with fentanyl. There is nobody ready to go. They are so defeated.
They're terrified. So I have friends who are strung out on fentanyl, and they'll call me and they're suicidal, but they cannot escape the grips. I took a friend of mine who's facing some jail time, which I wish it was prison time so that they would go and arrest him. I went and picked him up. Josh and I have been trying to do an episode with him because I really want to catch him in the grips of his misery. And the state has allowed his small child to live in the home with him and the mother. And I am flabbergasted. However, I went to pick him up and I dropped him off at detox. And he left a couple of days later. And I cannot tell you how many times he's called me crying because he's terrified of the kick. Mm-hmm. They've designed it that way.
Yes, they did. And these guys don't see it. And I know that you've done an episode on Emily.
Yes.
And I think...
How many other Emilys are there that you know of? Children under the age of 18 that are trapped in these awful encampments that police can't even go into anymore. Mm-hmm. I know what happens, and I've said this on one of the episodes. I know what happens in those encampments in the dark. Mm-hmm. And I know what happens to young girls in the drug environment. And that's just back, like you were talking about, with the heroin, meth, and cocaine environment. and what happened to young girls in those environments. So we're talking about a whole different beast now, and no one can access these environments.
No, I can tell you, I've been in that encampment right there in front of us, and we were looking for somebody, one of the drug dealers in there, to arrest him. And we knew that we're also looking for a runaway child. And we knew that she was in there with him because they were boyfriend, girlfriend. She was 17 at the time. So age of consent,
Right.
It's not illegal for her to be back there with him as her boyfriend, but she was a juvenile runaway. So we found him in his tent. And of course, what most people don't understand is that even though that is an illegal encampment on private property, I have to get a search warrant to get into that tent. And I have to have sufficient cause to get a search warrant to get into that tent. Eventually, we were persistent enough just outside the tent, and that she popped out and we got her out. And we walked her all the way into where they load up the trucks there. And I talked to her for a good long time about, I asked her, I said, sweetheart, when's the last time you showered? And she goes, I don't know. And I asked her, when's the last time she ate? She goes, well, we eat pretty good. Well, I don't know what eating pretty good is, but she probably weighed about 78 pounds, and she shouldn't have. She should have weighed much more than that. And she was, the reason that this girl sticks in my head so much is the night that Emily was found in the tent, the name we got from the people around that tent was not Emily's name. It was a different girl's name. And I immediately knew when I heard the name that this is the runaway that we have been looking for 6 or 8 months in the other encampment. So when she was 16. And I called my partner, Lieutenant, and I said, look, I think we found, I won't say her name, I think we found the other girl. And I said, and I'm sorry, I think she might be dead. And so because we had her name, I sat in a room with a big screen with another officer, and we were doing social media plus our photos that we had, where we were trying to identify the deceased girl with the girl we thought it was. So we were looking at 16-year-old pictures of people when they were happy, trying to figure out, is this our girl? And then eventually we figured out that Emily was Emily and that the other girl was not her. But I and another officer, we were looking through 4 to 5 young girls who we all know are current runaways, who we all know frequent these encampments, and we're trying to decide at a desk which one of them is dead. I walked out of that office and I walked down the hallway and I was speechless. I was like, what have we come to that I have a 6-pack of photos of girls that it could be the dead girl. There are 6 other girls who matched the description who it could be. It tears your heart out is what it does. And that's the side of us that people don't see when we're in there and, we're near tears trying to figure out, is this our girl? Because we have to try and figure out how we're going to contact parents. Where is this girl go to school? How are we going to figure out what we're going to say? Because that's all important stuff that we have to do. And I know we signed up for it, but there are scars on my heart that will never go away. Ever go away. And the fact that the fact that we had enough pictures that we had to have an array and go, is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? That was terrifying to me.
And I would imagine that they're unrecognizable when they're in this state.
Oh, of course.
In these fentanyl encampments, they're not even
this girl here,
child.
No, she was so skinny that I think I probably could have put my hands around her thigh and have them just about touch. And she is a 17-year-old, should have been an athletic girl. I think that I probably could have grabbed around her thigh and it wouldn't have been much bigger than this. And I'm pretty sure that if I had grabbed her around the waist with my fingers, that I probably would have been pretty close to touching on both sides. That's how skinny she was. And we got her out. We got her with her mom. Her mom was supposed to try and get her to treatment. And within 2 months, she was back out here with the same guy in this tent, in the same tent we got her out of, basically, the same location with this guy. And now she's a month away from being 18, or maybe she's even turned 18. And now we can't do anything. Now we can't even go and force her out of there anymore because she's 18 years old. And she's with a guy who is probably a mid-level dealer in that encampment. So she has all the access to the fentanyl that she needs. In a way, she might be protected a little bit because he is a dealer, so
Yeah.
he doesn't need money. But if he gets to the point where he's no longer a dealer and he needs money, you and I both know what she's going to be doing.
She'll be trafficked.
She'll be trafficked. And there's a ton of women out there and young boys, because we always, I think the public forgets that young boys get, young boys and young men get trafficked.
Oh, they do.
And we just don't talk about it. But I think we need to talk about it.
I think we do too. And I watched that happen to so many young boys just when I was smoking crack and doing heroin. Because they become desperate for the drug and willing to do whatever, and then older men take advantage of them.
Absolutely.
And really bad things happen to the boys.
Really bad things happen. And as underreported as sexual assault is on a general basis, now you take a subset and you take young boys who are addicted to drugs and they're vulnerable anyway, and they have maybe mental health issues and nobody has cared for them. And now they know this is the way that they survive. How are they going to report?
Right.
Because then they have to report.
Well, then they're going to be ashamed, first of all. They're still going to be addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
Right. And they've gotten to a place where it's okay for them to sell their body.
And their inhibitions are lower, and then they just take more drugs to drown that out.
Yeah.
So it's this vicious cycle that never stops. And when you add, what I don't think people understand is this is exacerbated by the tremendous, powerful hold and grip that fentanyl has.
Absolutely.
Fentanyl is a drug unlike any other. And when people hear fentanyl, they think pharmaceutical grade.
Medical grade fentanyl, and it is not the same.
It is not that.
It's not even close to the same.
It's not the same.
Because my grandmother, my 80-something-year-old grandmother, before she passed away, had pancreatic cancer and was on fentanyl patches. Oh yeah, it is not the same drug. It is not the same.
This is Geraldine. She's just texting. It's coming from China.
These are chemicals that are manufactured in big barrels in places, and it's brought up through our borders that are wide open.
And it's brought in on the internet.
And on the internet, the black web, the dark web, or whatever they call that.
And when you think about it, if you buy a little half pound of fentanyl, which is a small, tiny little package, and the amount of pills that can make, it is millions of pills that it can make. And we're seeing a resurgence now in white fentanyl powder.
Okay.
So we don't know if I don't know if they're snorting it or if they're smoking it as well, and they may be putting it into more of a crack type pipe to smoke it. But they're still smoking the blue pills here. But we're seeing an increase in officers arresting people and finding white fentanyl powder. So now you have it in powder form, which is,
Well, I feel like that's even far more dangerous because it can touch more surfaces and it's easier to breathe in.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's...
So let me ask you this, because Josh and I covered some stories in Seattle in some encampments right down by the methadone clinic, because there's no requirement now if you're on methadone to actually not utilize street level narcotics. And so we were able to go into a tent where they were smoking the pills, I believe, and the smell was horrific. The smell was disgusting. Now, does the powder and the pills have the same kind of odor? Do you know?
I don't know.
Because it's pretty identifiable when people smoke the pills.
Mm-hmm. And I think the reason it's identifiable is because it's the combination of the fentanyl and the burning foil. Because if you burn foil, like if you were to light foil on fire, it has a particular odor.
It does. It definitely does.
So I think it's the combination. But I think if... Just like when people are smoking meth.
Like if you use a meth pipe or something, like the smell is different.
The smell is different. So I think it's a little
Tells
different
you how
because
long
there's
it's
no
been
foil.
since I've used any kind of drugs. Thank God.
Yes.
Fentanyl wasn't a thing when I got arrested. I like to say I got clean. No, I was arrested December 5th of 2012. So December 6th is my clean date. And back then, fentanyl wasn't a thing.
Right.
It was not a thing.
And all the people I talked to from, as they say now, back in the day, because I actually am old enough to say that now.
Yeah.
Me
too.
From back in the day, when I arrested these folks, most of them tell me, they just look at me and they go, Murphy, if fentanyl had been around when I was around, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
Because I would have been in it.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. I have one young girl who I spent a lot of time with her when I would arrest her. Beautiful girl, very smart girl back when she was a teenager. Sassy as all get out, so that made me like her even more because I love when someone's a little sassy.
Smart, cute, sassy girls make it along. Boy, my daughter, and I'll tell you, sometimes I'm like, I'm going to end up in jail. But I don't want to break it because there's a lot of value there.
Yes, so she was sassy with me, so I didn't like that part, but I just like the sass in her. So I would get her in the back of the car, and we would talk on the way to the jail. And I always told her, I said, Juana, you can do better. You can do this. You are so smart, and you have it. You just need to make the decision. And when you make the decision, I said, I guarantee you will come back to me one day and you will show me and tell me what you've done with your life. Well, she ended up getting pregnant. Cold turkey stopped all drugs.
Yeah.
And then I didn't hear from her for years and years and years and years and years. And her boyfriend was a prolific car thief, drug dealer, dope user. And one day, she has a very particular laugh. So one day I was getting gas in my patrol car, and it's at a Pacific Pride station, so that's also where the school buses get their gas. And so I heard, oh my God, is that Murphy? And so I turned around, and there she was. Same beautiful, bright eyes, immense smile. And what I got this giant bear hug from her. And so then we talked. And she has 3 kids. They're in various levels of school. One of them's going to college. The other one will be going to college, and the other one's going to go to high school. She's raised them to be polite kids. She got herself a job, and she's now a school bus driver.
That's awesome.
And she sits there, and I said, I'm not going to tell you. She goes, I know, Murphy, you're going to say I told you so. I said, I'm not going to say that, Moana. What I was going to say is not I told you so, but a different version of that. I said, didn't I tell you?
Yeah.
You could do this. See?
Yeah.
I said, didn't I tell you could do this? And she is just like, yeah, I know. I said, there's a reason why I would lecture you on the way to the jail. And I know you hated every minute of it. It's because we believe and we see things in you. We know that this is not who you are. This is who you are borrowing at the moment. And your addiction has taken over who you are, and it's buried inside. But deep inside is that little girl who had dreams, and is that adult who can come out.
Yeah.
And so now every time I see her, I just get the same big hug, and then she tells everybody that's walking by that she used to do this and she used to be that. And, this one here, she points at me, this one here arrested me all the time, and she chased me. And but she always talked to me, and so then she's super proud of what she's done, as am I. But there's so many stories that we see, and I wish that we could parade them one at a time, without end, in front of the people who say that arresting people for their drug addiction is bad, and that we are humiliating them, and that we're doing all these things wrong. We're not. You are not in the car when I'm talking to somebody who is dead on their addiction, and I am telling them that you can do this. You can get clean, and that we are telling them that you are more than this. They don't see that because they're not in the cars with us. They just think that we just go out and want to arrest people and throw them in jail and lock away the key. And to me, it's not that. We have to have dual diagnosis and treatment facilities, and we have to have an immense number of them. We have to have a lot of people.
Carceral system
In our
should
carceral
look
system,
like that.
yes.
Yes.
In the carceral system, but outside of it as well, because
Yes.
there are people we
All
can
of the
get.
structures need
Yes.
to look the same.
Yes.
Treatment,
Yes.
social services,
Yes.
carceral systems, they all need to look the same.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. And people don't know. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, is we're trying to show the real stories.
And I'm glad.
The real ones.
I have an idea that I've floated past our prosecutor's office, and I wish they could do it. But we have empty state prisons for juveniles.
Yep.
That are sitting empty.
We actually have a couple for adults too that have cleared out. We have Larch, we have Pine Lodge that shut down back in 2010 when I was locked up. So,
but the juvenile facilities are less stark, if you will, to begin with, right? Because they were built for juveniles.
Yeah.
So my idea is we get 10 to 12 prosecutors in the state to look in their offices for 10 to 12 people each who fit a certain set of criteria. They have multiple charges against them, nonviolent property crimes that are feeding their addiction. And we get them together with a defense attorney so that the person is represented. And basically we find these, let's just say each prosecutor's office comes up with 10. So we have 10 prosecutors' office, we have 100 people. We get them to agree Let's say you have 15 charges, property crimes, theft, whatever, malicious mischief, who cares? But you have 15 charges that's going to put you, if you were to get convicted of all of them, you would be getting, I don't know, let's just say 3 years in prison. They agree, if you agree to plead guilty to just 5 of these, you will get 18 months in prison, or you go to 12 months to this intensive, high care treatment facility in this juvenile facility. You can go to DOC for 18 months and spend all of your 18 months there if you wish, but you can take this for 12 months. But what we're going to offer you here is medical detox, counseling, figuring out why you're using drugs, how do you prevent from going back, what are your triggers, how do you can build a support system, and then you're going to learn a damn job in there. You're going to have to help take care of the facility. So if you like plants, you get to grow stuff. If you like to cook, we can get you in the kitchen. You might be able to graduate with your sous chef stuff. And then in the meantime, while we have them in there for a year, there's funding that you build a transitional housing facility right outside that facility. So when they graduate from that facility, they get to go and come back and remain as an employee inside the facility with the jobs that they've done, and then become leaders and examples to those who are entering the facility. Yeah. And then from there, that transitional housing, you get to live there. And if you're working at the facility, that subsidizes your rent. And eventually, you turn that upside down. The more they make here, the more they make at a job, the more rent they pay. As they have things, then they can start acquiring things, and they're not tied to this rent. And then if they want to continue working, they can. Otherwise, they can exit and graduate out and do something different.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like you do that for a trial run. You can then have a statistic.
You collect data. You collect the real data to show the
real data.
Because you're training people. That is everything that I've built and I'm doing here in Washington State. And I'm incubating. I can't advertise where I have implemented so far without permission, but I can say that I am in an institution, and the whole entire goal is to recreate the system so that we are teaching people how to fish sustainably post-release.
Because we know for a fact that when we get people through and they come out the other side, very often, not always, but very often, they go back to help. You're an example. Yeah. You got out.
Well, service is a huge component. It's a huge component, and it helps a person find value in their experience. And I think as a person with lived experience who's made a bunch of choices that landed me in places I didn't want to be, I considered all of the things that I did a failure. And so I looked to the other side, my perspective of what they did, and obviously they knew stuff that I didn't. But the fact of the matter is they didn't ever come from where I came from. So when we get the opportunity to go back into environments that we're familiar with and serve, because we've developed a skill set to stop shooting ourselves in the foot, it has exponential capabilities.
Right.
And it provides the hope for others who are hopeless. Because I would argue that 99% of the people that are in these environments don't like the condition of their life.
They don't like the condition of their life.
But they can't stop it.
But they
cannot.
Yes.
This is the thing. They cannot stop it on their own. So in 2012, I didn't even want to get loaded when I started using again. I didn't. And once I started, I couldn't stop. I needed, and I prayed for death. You know what God did? God sent the cops. Cops aren't coming anymore. Ginnies aren't being rescued. Yes. That's my problem. We have villainized.
That's my problem.
I know. And we have villainized the very people that were in positions regardless of intention. Are there going to be some jerks? Yeah, there are I'm a jerk sometimes. If you ask the people that I live with, my husband, my child, I promise you they're not going to consider me a ray of sunshine all the time. But it's not about a person's feelings or emotions behind their behavior. It is often the action, and the action of removing a person from their destructive path is more beneficial than all of these fluffy concepts, feelings, and ideas of ethics, because that's what it is. They teach a whole lot about ethics in our colleges today. And I'm going to tell you, my message to most people is when you can go sit inside of a prison without support, or you go sit inside of a dope house late at night when there's nobody there, then you talk to me about what ethics are. Go spend a week with those. So take a prisoner home. Take a prisoner home for a month, and then let me know how you feel about that.
It's so difficult to get folks to understand. I was running a drug operation about a year and a half ago helping run a drug operation, and we had to. And I sat in my place where I was observing, and I sat there for 6 hours one day, and I literally watched these two brothers, because I know them. They were brothers. They are brothers. And I literally watched them for 6.5 hours do nothing but sit on the sidewalk, smoke, pass out, wake up, smoke, pass out, wake up, walk, get up, walk 25 yards, shuffle around, dig in their pockets, talk to somebody, make an exchange, go back and sit down and smoke and pass out and smoke. 6 hours. These two boys are 22 years old, 22 and 23 years old. And they're brothers from the same family. And I'm sitting in this window going, oh my God, how is it that I cannot do anything about it? Yeah. And that was when we couldn't do anything about the possession. So we were going after the dealers. Yeah. So luckily we were able to build cases, and we took 3 dealers down and cleaned that area up. But in the meantime, two young lads are still out on the street smoking. They're
spiraling. Their lives are spiraling around the train.
I see them every day. We'll probably see them downtown today, or one of them. The other one's in prison, I think, now. But we'll see one of them downtown today when we go downtown. Geraldine, I don't know where she is. I texted her. She doesn't see me, so I'm going to drive forward a little bit. And so I don't know how much you guys want to see, but I know that you were here talking to Shelly.
Yeah.
Who lives in the Tullwood Apartments.
Well, you guys all know each other around here, don't you?
Well, I've talked to Shelly quite a bit, and so Shelly is great. I've talked to her a lot. So it used to be. Now I want you to see this. This property.
I feel like there are more tents and stuff here than when we were here a couple weeks ago.
Yes, it happens all the time. So this property right here, fenced, and he patrols it. So you see no camps. So the way the property line goes here is on this side of the street where you see that white pickup, where you see the fence line. If you keep drawing a line dead south, that is a 20-acre parcel of property that goes that direction. So south and east. From here over, this property right here actually belongs to Tullwood. Oh. And so they are actually responsible for cleaning this up. So what's happened is, over the last several years, while that encampment used to be probably 70 or 80 yards into the woods, it has gotten so big that they have all come out all the way out to here. This was all heavily underbrushed. You could not see in there even a year ago. They have cleared out all of this underbrush.
I feel like, okay, we were here, a couple weeks ago, right, Josh? And no, there was a truck that was bringing in a load of lumber to build stuff.
There, if we walked all the way back there, like probably several hundred yards, and crossed the creek, which is very dangerous at this moment, you would find that there are little cabins. There's little cities in there. We had a homicide back there, shooting homicide, and the investigators had to go back there and light up the scene. And in the photos, you can actually see that there are fenced off little properties. So they have fenced properties with their double tents in there, and then it says posted, keep out, no trespassing, and then you can almost see like a little road, and it's just cleared out brush, and then somebody else has their little tent behind their little fence here. I mean, there's actual little I want to say little neighborhoods back there. Yeah. Now I don't know if they're there now, because obviously they're all shanty put together, so the wind and whatever may have taken those down, they just build more. But this entire thing right here, that wasn't there a month ago.
What, right, when we were here, I feel like this stuff wasn't this close last time, if I recall.
And they've come to higher ground, and because it's so full back there, they can't get back there. So what they've done is they've created a road at along the fence line here. I think there's probably a car about 2/3 of the way down there, not even, and it's in the middle of that road right now.
How often are you guys called out here?
Quite often, but like...
Do you ever get calls from within the encampment? Yeah. You do?
Yeah, there was a machete attack where they called from within the encampment, and they had to guide us in, and somebody got somebody almost got their hand chopped off by the machete, and we pulled him out, got him to the hospital. He had to go to Harborview.
Did you guys find the assailant?
Mm-hmm. Got the assailant, arrested him. There was the county did a huge drug investigation back there with because we don't have a drug unit anymore, but they have their drug unit, gang and drug task force. They did a huge investigation, both Bellingham and county SWAT. We went in early one morning to take the main tent down that we had a search warrant for. The main dope dealer got snagged in Oregon. He was on his way back up here. Oregon State Police found him. 75,000 pills of fentanyl on him.
Oh, my God.
And he was coming back up here. 75,000 pills. In the other encampment that we cleaned last May, I was in there one day, and there was a truck sitting up on the hill. And I noted the truck, and I noted the plate, and I recognized who he was, and I knew he's a dope dealer. So he just basically drove his truck up the hill and planted himself there, and he made all the people crawl, limp, whatever, from their tents to come get their fentanyl from him. He sat in his nice new truck with his big, it's one of those drink containers that you're supposed to be able to, it's a drink container, keeps water cold.
Oh,
there was no
like
water.
The Yetis.
Yeah, it was full of fentanyl pills.
Full of pills.
He had a gun on him, and he was sitting in that encampment with those starving, tired, ill, drug-addicted people, and he had $17,000 of cash in his pocket. Now, I don't know what you think 17 grand can buy, but I know damn well that it could have bought every one of those people a place
Something
to
to
stay
eat, yeah.
and something to eat
Yeah.
and some new clothes. So he's sitting there, 17 grand in his pocket, gun in his jeans, and then he's just passing out the pills like they're sugar candy as people deigned to come and visit him on high in his truck. Now, we arrested him a day later, and that's how we figured out that that container was full of, because I saw the container in his truck at some point in time, and I think, well, okay, he has this little cold drink there, but it's actually full of fentanyl pills. And he just sits right there at the edge of the encampment and makes everybody come to him.
Yeah.
And, that was during the time where at least we arrested him for possession with intent, even though our prosecutors really didn't have a measurable amount of what possession with intent was now, because they took it all away, right? Now our prosecutors like, well, possession with intent, we're hearing that people are smoking 30 or 40 pills a day. So if you arrest a person with 30 or 40 pills, that's just possession. That's not possession with intent. I said, but I can argue that their cell phone is buzzing. They have small baggies. They have all of these broken up into little...
All of the things that have always qualified, regardless of whether you had an 8-ball or an ounce.
Mm-hmm. But our prosecutors were a little reticent. And so at least this guy had like 1,200 or 1,500 pills. So that obviously went. And that was the one of 3 times within rapid fire, because we arrested him for delivery or possession with intent, and he got out. And then we arrested him again with possession with intent, took his car, searched the car, found more pills, another gun. So weapons violation and the drugs, and he was released again. And then we had to arrest him again.
And was he from this area?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was from this area. So it's brutal, and we know that
Feels
people...
brutal on every side.
It is absolutely brutal, and it's like our officers are frustrated.
I'm grateful that you guys have stuck around, but how maddening.
It's maddening, but it is maddening. But I feel fiercely protective of my community, fiercely protective. And I spent 30 years of my life at that time, 30, 28 years, whatever it was when it was going on, of my life being a police officer. And I feel like I owe, because of my backstory, every day that I serve, I'm paying back the debt of being allowed to live in this country, because I'm not from here. And so being allowed to live in this country, that is what I do. I served in the military because I felt like I needed to do something to show that I was immensely grateful for the privilege of living in this country. And the same thing with my service for the police department. So why was I going to then walk away at the time where I felt like our communities needed us the most? Not me necessarily, because I'm not any special officer.
When I say you, I mean law enforcement.
Right.
Yeah.
Needed us the most, even though they didn't realize they needed us, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't, and leaving at that time would have left a bitter taste in my mouth. And for me, I need to feel joyful when I retire. I need to know that I did everything that I could, and that the pendulum has swung back to some place where we feel normalcy and we feel like that we're helping people as opposed to hindering them. And so it was extremely important for me because I vowed to myself 30 years ago when I saw some bitter cops that were near retirement. I was like, you will never be that way, Claudia. Never. Because I want the young officers coming into the department to see that at 30 years, I have done things to maintain my ability to keep a good attitude about this job and about what we do. Because if I don't provide that example to them, then who do they have to look up to? If everyone 20 years on is just bitter and mad about the things that occurred, we could be mad and we can try to affect change, and we could do the things that we're allowed to do within the constraints of the law. And then we have constituents, and we have our chiefs, and we have our sheriffs continuously to talk to make the changes. But if we give in to the bitterness, then we are not serving the people who need us the most. Yeah. And if you're bitter on the street, and there's somebody who might have said at this moment, I'm going to tell that officer. And if I come off as bitter and not ready to listen, that person will have lost their ability to tell me what they need to tell me. And so for me, it was all about the fact that I still think, and I will to the day I die, very likely, believe that I need to continue paying a debt that is owed to me for the ability to be able to have come to this country. Because had I not come here when I did, I would not be the human I am today.
Yeah.
And so everything that I've been able to do, be in the military, graduate from high school, the option of college if I wanted it, the college classes I've taken, the job I've had, and the things that I've been able to do are solely because I was brought here. And I was brought here in very terrible circumstances. My father kidnapped me from my mother in Europe and brought me here. So while that whole thing has a whole other effect, my mother lost her children, and there's a guilt associated to that because however happy I was, that's how unhappy she was. So that for me perpetuates this idea that if someone had to suffer from that decision that my father made, and I got to reap all the benefit, and my mother suffered for many, many years and still does, then how can I do anything but put my best foot forward and do the things that help people the most? Mm-hmm. And so when you say, I'm glad you didn't leave, it's more than that for me. I couldn't leave because I also didn't want that punctuation mark on my career.
I understand.
Right?
I do. Because sometimes I'm like, really, God, why me? And people say, oh, most people get out and then they move away from that life. And I feel like it's my responsibility to do what I'm doing. Yeah. So I understand. Different circumstances, but the same thing.
Yes, indeed.
It's the same thing.
So do you guys want to get a little bit closer? Geraldine and I can get out and kind of keep you, see what they're doing is they're hauling in propane tanks.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go tell these guys that they actually can't park there because it says no parking anytime, tow away zone.
Okay.
So if you guys want to get out. So like I said, if you take that fence line and you go, basically it's a rectangle going that direction and east. And then this here is actually the property that belongs to Tollwood.
Okay.
And so they're responsible for keeping this clean. And even a few months ago, when I was up here, this was all covered in brush. You couldn't see anything. Like literally you drove to the corner and all you could see was the little tiny trail inside there. So they have clear cut all of this.
Yeah.
And they've hauled all this stuff in and they've brought it all in, and 90% of this stuff is all stolen.
Oh yeah.
90%. So if you walk to the sidewalk here, I think you can probably see down the fence line a little bit. So this fence line here, so you can see that there's tents there that didn't used to be. This was all densely wooded area right here.
Yeah.
And if we were to walk straight in, you used to be able to walk in a clear line along the fence line, and you can't do that now because this massive area has been clear cut by all these guys. And there's probably, once you go past around the corner, there's probably 400 or 500 shopping carts back there.
Oh my gosh.
And probably last time I walked through there, we went in and headed that direction. I encountered 2 or 3 cars that have been in there for years. And then now you can hook around and go this way. And it weaves.
So they have a trail system that goes through there.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's
and what
wild.
people don't realize is every single person that's in here is very likely addicted to fentanyl or other things.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've talked to our public works division, but I think since our solid waste division was started last June, They have picked up nearly 1 million pounds of garbage, and the
Oh,
only
yeah,
place that
doesn't
they can
surprise
pick
me.
up is public property. They cannot go on private property and pick up.
So,
This is
yeah,
going to
these
have
things are-
this is going to have to be the private property owners' cleanup. They're going to have to pay for this, and it is going to be massive.
And the retail theft, I'm imagining, is just off the chain.
Off the chain.